During the 1990s, I worked in software development, and, well, the other confession I have to make is I'm an art school dropout. If you're an art school dropout who goes into software development, and if you can write code, well, that makes you the UI person. If you're the UI person and you're comfortable enough talking with customers and users, that makes you, well, more customer-facing. You do that long enough, and that makes you a product manager. And by the end of the 90s, I was a product manager for a small product company. And I stumbled into this Agile thing. Well, I was recruited into a company that was practicing something called extreme programming. And this was in 2000 in San Francisco. They hired this guy named Kent Beck, who had written this book that was supposed to be pretty interesting about this stuff. And we learned a really different way of working. Now, I absolutely fell in love with the deliberate attention to process and how we're doing things, and the fact that we could do things to be more successful. I fell in love with that part of Agile. But during the 1990s, well, I learned that you can't just build stuff and ship it. That a lot of attention needs to be paid to how we decide what to build. Just a quick show of hands. Has anyone ever sat with a customer or user while they use a product that you've made? Wow, not a lot of people. Think back to the first time you did that, and how did that go? Yeah, I'm looking for the inside thing. It's that first realization that, my God, in spite of all the time I put into really thinking this through and creating a product that I thought was really good, they're not getting it. And if you could move past blaming them, if you can move past it's the stupid user's fault, and start doing things, you'll encounter that first success of actually building something that people like and that helps people. So what gets me up every morning is knowing that, well, when I was a product person, knowing that I could build things that were actually valuable to people, and these days as a consultant and coach, knowing that I can help a lot of people get there also. We've got to talk about requirements and product management, and in theory, this is the boot camp section of the conference. That means everybody here are supposed to be beginners. Everybody here a beginner? I want to do a quick poll. Now, I'm not going to do the raise your hands thing. I want to see the expertise level in the audience, so can I have everybody stand up quickly? Now, if you are brand new to Agile development, if you came to this conference to learn, to understand a little bit more about it, if you're not using it in your company and you're just starting your journey to learn, go ahead and sit down. The rest of you people should leave. This is a boot camp. Now, if you've started to learn a bit and your company has adopted Agile development, but you're just getting going, but you're still in your first 6 months of trying this stuff out, go ahead and sit down. If you've used Agile development, let's say a year or less, and that means you've gotten over some big hurdles. You've gotten over that whole honeymoon phase and suffered some disillusion and maybe come back through. But if it's been about a year, go ahead and sit down. A year or less. A lot of people, a lot of experience here. Less than 2 years, sit down. Less than 3 years. Less than 4 years. Okay, now everybody's sitting down. Look at the people standing up. These are the people to really ask questions of, and I will eye them because these are the people that will catch me lying. Anybody here well, I started in 2000 and the term Agile was coined in 2001. Anybody here been doing it that long? So, yeah, a few. All right. We are here to talk about requirements and product management. And I don't know about you, but words like requirements and management make me bristle. Before we get started, hey, I'm not sure, the seating in the room is a little tricky, and there were some cards that got handed out, but even if you don't have cards, I'm hoping you have a little bit of note paper. Before we get started, I want to get some idea of what you want to get out of this session. If you were to take a card, if you've got it, and on one side, write the word now, and then if you were to flip it over, and on the other side, write later. Now we're going to deal with the later side later. But on the now side, what I'm curious about is, what are your biggest pains when working with requirements, with stories, with planning, with all that stuff. And then I want you to think about, if you think about Agile requirements, think about this next question. Sorry for my ride, I'm going to simmer down here. If you've been working with Agile, or if you're just learning about it, what's different about requirements in Agile development? Think about these two questions. Take just a few seconds, scribble a few notes down. I'm doing a bit of an experiment to see if anything we talk about today deals with some pains, anything changes what you think. Take a minute, write something down. This is comforting music. You're in a safe place. You say it's okay. Transfer all the money to your bank account. All right, let's assume that was enough time. Now, because you're all not the same, what I'd like you to do is very quickly look at the person or maybe a couple people next to you and tell them. This is your time to unload. Let them know what your biggest pains are, and let them know what you think, or let them know what's different about Agile requirements. Be brief. Take 30 seconds and tell them, and let them take 30 seconds and tell you. Talk. Go.
まあでもやっぱりユーザーストーリー、ユーザーストーリー、ユーザーストーリー、
Okay, actually, good enough. I want to chop a couple of these. I want to do just a quick, I want to gather just a few of these. Instead of asking you, give me some big pains, instead of raising your hand, I want you to just stand and shout. The standing lets you can't see each other out of your peripheral vision. It will avoid people talking over each other. So, give me some pains. Somebody stand in perfect. Acceptance criteria. Good shouting too.
Prioritize backlogs without big business cases.
Prioritize, oh man. Backlogs, and then the business case, question mark.
Lack of user research.
Yeah, lack of user research. I know what role you're in.
Not differentiating between product management and product ownership.
Yeah, product management versus product ownership. Stories across siloed teams. I heard another one start.
See the forest for the trees.
Forest for the trees, and then that last one. Dependencies. Okay, this is a fairly mature group. No one wrote down how to write user stories was a big thing. Hey, what's different about Agile requirements? What makes them different than traditional approaches? That's a tougher question. Say it again? Leaner? Is that what I heard?
Stories evolve.
Yeah, stories evolve.
They're not all defined up front in great detail.
Not all defined up front. How do you guys need this class? You got it.
They focus on why, what, instead of how.
You guys really don't need this class. Say it again? Yeah, small deliverable chunks. I'm going to stop there. Wow. Yeah, you guys already know all the stuff. Good. All right. I'm not sure if I finished my story. I mentioned that I don't like Agile development. And it was because when I first entered an Agile project, I was told I could either be a product person, I could either be what was a customer in extreme programming or a developer. And I said, I've got great news for you, I do both. And they said, that's not the way Agile development works. You can do one or the other. And then I said, well, gosh, I really have to choose. I really like writing code, so I'll be a developer. I said, well, actually, you're not good enough to be a developer. Your domain knowledge is too important, so you need to be a product manager. And about killed myself. But that's where I developed this really strong concern that, man, we're not doing things right. But all the seeds of doing things right we're always there. So let's see, if I've got 5 big points to make and 1 hour to do it in. And the other thing I'll tell people is that I'm a product manager, so that means I want everything. And I'm a developer, which means I can't estimate. So we're going to, I'm going to skip through high points. The slides, I'll download or put up the updated slides, and there's more in the slides than we'll talk about today. You can decide whether they work well or not. But we need to talk about the R word, about requirements. We need to talk about stories. And I know that, who was in Mike Cohen's class yesterday talking about stories? You're going to have to let me know at the end if I contradict anything Mike says, because it's my intention to. Because I want to correct some misconceptions. I want to talk about the whole size things. Stories are big, stories are little, and, well, the truth is they're both. I want to talk about, well, we talk about this product owner, but, well, the word, what is the difference between a project and a product, and why can a project be successful without a product being successful? And then finally I want to talk about finishing on time. And finishing on time doesn't mean finishing everything. So I want to talk about strategies for that. Now, some of you have heard me talk before. You're going to hear a lot of the same things in a little evolution. This may be your time to sneak out. Now, they asked me to do this particular track to talk about requirements, and I said I'm happy to talk about requirements so long as I can start with this particular quote from, well, this guy. This is Ken Beck, and I told you I learned what I know about Agile development. I learned from extreme programming initially, and I learned from this book. This is called the White Book, and it was quickly, well, it was replaced a few years later by the Green Book, or the second edition. Some people refer to them as the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it's in this particular book that Kent gives this particular quote, that software development has been steered wrong by the word requirement, defined in the dictionary as something mandatory or obligatory. The word carries a connotation of absolutism and permanence, inhibitors to embracing change. And the word requirement is just plain wrong. Now, you can see that that's in a section called Stories, and if you were to tell Kent that stories are the way Agile development does requirements, it would make him sad. Stories are the antidote to requirements, and Kent goes on to say that, to really get value, most of the time you need only build a fraction of what's actually required. Now, I need to start with a model that I draw a lot. You're going to have to tell me if the drawing works. I've got slides that cover these things, but the drawing works for me. It helps me pace myself. Your job in software development, and our job especially in an Agile process, isn't to build software. In fact, it's not even to build more software. Our job is to change the world. Now that sounds tough, but there's a simple change the world model. We have to start by thinking about the world as it is now. And when we look at the world as it is now, we find that there are people that are unhappy, and people that are mad, and people that might be confused. But it's looking at these people and them using our product or having other challenges that causes us to come up with ideas. Now, those ideas might be for features or whole new products. They might be for the enhancements. We might go on to kind of specify them and talk to teams about them, but eventually at some point in time we might call them the requirements. Now, this is the word that gives me a little pause. I cut teeth in a small company that made products for brick and mortar retailers, large chain retailers that had over 100 locations or so. And I can remember learning this stuff. Well, I grew up there, and I knew that I had lots of different customers, and my job was to understand their problems and satisfy them. I got through most of well, most of the 90s without ever using that word requirement. But as our company grew to a few hundred people, we pulled in more traditional software people, and they started using that word. And I can remember, well, someone coming to me and my team and saying, hey, Jeff, we've got these things we need you to add into the part of product you manage here. And I said, great. Tell me a little bit about who's using them and what they're doing and how this is helping. And she looked at me and said, well, they're requirements. And I said, yeah, I get it. Tell me, what customer is using these things and how is this helping them? What problems does it solve? And she looked at me like I was stupid and said, they're requirements. And that's when I learned that that word means shut up. And in a lot of organizations, calling things requirements ends discussion. It means this is exactly what it needs to do, and it is a discussion killer. Or, can't put it, it stops you from embracing change. So the first thing, understand, now you may not suffer the same post-traumatic stress disorder over that word that I do. You may use the word requirement freely and understand that it doesn't mean that things are actually required. But if you catch yourself stopping conversation about who's using a product and how this helps them, stop that. Now, let's continue this model. The idea here is that we go through some development process and we have this delivery moment. And outcomes, not potentially shippable software, outcomes software we actually ship. And this actually shipped software goes into the world later. And what we hope is that those people that were unhappy before are happy now. And some people are less happy, and some people they're just no pleasing. But the point is, these people aren't happy because they saw the box. These people are happy because they behaved differently. They were working some way before, or trying to satisfy a problem or accomplish a goal before, in one way that wasn't so good, and now, as a consequence of you putting this product into the world, their world has changed. That's what we're focused on delivering. And, well, that's the only thing worth delivering. And I'm going to tell you that everything between here and here, between the idea and the delivery, that is output. That's what we build. That's what we measure with velocity. That's what we get fixated with delivering on time. But everything that happens out here is what I'm going to call outcome. And that's some more subtlety to this model, but your job is not to build more software. In fact, your job is to minimize the amount of software you build at the same time that you maximize the amount of benefit that you get. So, well, requirements are the things that get in the way of solving this real problem of maximizing output. Stop looking at requirements as required, and, well, let's talk about Kent's idea for solving this problem.